Welcome to the Nerds and Friends podcast. Today we have Dianne Gardner joining myself and my astute co-host Carey DuVal. Will Shaw will be joining us momentarily. And Dianne, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in with our first question. I want to ask you about your books because I'm looking at the covers and I love them, especially the Ian's Realm saga. I love the Golden Dragon on there. That's a great cover you got.
Thank you.
So tell me about your books. What are they about?
Okay, well, Ian's Realm, that dragon, by the way, is from a painting that I did, and I sent part of it to my book cover artist, and she did the beautiful cover to it.
Oh, that's cool.
Ian's Realm is about a young boy. He's about 15 years old. He goes into another world with his father through their computer. They find a portal, and they meet some little people and some characters that they made. And they end up finding some horses, and they go up to a mountain, and on the mountain they get separated because the dad sees the vision and gets drawn in because the horses have been stolen, and the boy gets abducted by dragon worshippers. And so the story goes from there, where he gets taken to a little village and has to do some work for those, gets treated as a slave, and his dad's up on the mountain in the dragon's lair, and his quest is to find his father and go home. But
that sounds like a really interesting.
It's a 6-book series. So.
Oh, nice.
Sounds like a fun kind of fish out of water kind of story. Like I'm a big fan of the classics. Oh, hey, we've got our other co-host Will here.
Hi, Will.
Hi.
Will, this is Dianne, our awesome guest today.
Hello, Dianne. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Sorry, Zoom has an interesting way of loading in for me. So it's just sitting there spinning its wheels for the last 5 minutes.
Oh no. Well, we're glad you're here, my friend. So Dianne, a 6-book series. I gotta ask, but the first question that pops to mind is, when you wrote the first book, did you have 6 books envisioned, or did it kind of build from there?
It kind of grew itself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
The first book that you see is 3 books put together. It used to be 3 separate books, and then I combined them all into the trilogy.
Oh, you did a reverse Tolkien.
Yeah, and then the book 3.2 and 3.1 and 3.2 I wrote after I had written book 4 and 5.
Oh.
I had people saying, well, we want Ian to stay in the realm. So I said, okay, well, we'll go back and put him back in for a little bit. But
that's fascinating.
That's fun.
That's really
What's cool. What was your influence for a story like this? Because this sounds like, your Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court kind of vibe. Like what drew you to this kind of story?
Well, I wanted to write a book that my young grandsons would read. I know girls love books and they read just about anything, but the boys, it's a little harder to target a story to, and they don't read because of that, because there isn't anything they're really interested in. So I actually had them, counseling them and say, okay, what would you like in a story? What would you like the dragon to be like? The first thing they said was no kissing. So
I heard Fred Savage. Is this a kissing book?
They wanted me to have this ferocious dragon that ate everybody and tore everybody up, and I said, well, we're gonna slow down on that. But
dial it back just a little bit.
I want other people to read it too.
That's funny.
And that's always the question of just how niche do you want your audience to be?
Right.
Well, so I wanted to ask Dianne, are you a plotter or a pantser? Like, do you outline your books beforehand, or do you just kind of write as you go and let it grow organically, or a combination?
I'm a plotter. I've got a hold of John Truby's Anatomy of Story, and I just love
great book.
Yeah, what he does, and especially the first books, I really stuck close to that, and then I got a little bit more freelance afterwards, and designed my own system of writing a book. But I have to plot. If I don't, I'll forget where I'm going or what I was doing. I don't have that good of a memory. But I enjoy plotting. I like to develop the characters first and the theme, the premise, and write that first, and figure out what the story's going to be, what the character arcs are going to be, and then give them a lot of supporting characters, or the antagonist has to have the same sort of thing happening with him too. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm curious. Sorry to keep jumping in, and because I have all these questions, because you said you painted the draft of your first cover. I'm curious how much your art factors into it, because I'm kind of a multi-learner. Like I can be visual and auditory, and like a mix of all sorts of things. And so like if I get stuck on something, I try and sketch it out. And I was wondering if you had like a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm mostly with my stories. I like to map things. I like to draw maps, because get my directions right.
My first love, my first artistic love, drawing maps.
But I've been an artist all my life. I've painted ever since I was a young kid, and did some sculpture and stuff too. So I'm actually have painted portraits professionally. So I have a website with my artwork on it. And when I started writing Ian's Realm, it had always been a desire of mine to paint a dragon, but I could never find an excuse to do it. So once I started writing the book, I was kind of painted and wrote at the same time, and figured out, okay, I know who's going to tackle this, this dragon here, and it's going to be a lot like my grandsons. And the theme of the story has a lot to do with the relationship with Ian and his father. And the reason I did that is because my grandsons grew up without a dad. The dad kind of left the home. And I wanted the boys to see through the story that you can be the father, the kind of man that you wanted your father to be. You don't have to lose yourself, and go the wrong route, but you can be that man that you thought your father should have been to you. So that's kind of the basic theme of the story.
That's a really wonderful like message. I love that.
Yeah, just to check, and this might be a mini plug. Like, is your website Dianne L. Gardner Fine Art?
That's my art website.
Okay, you've got a beautiful style.
Thank you.
Your landscapes are fantastic. Sorry, I can be a bit of a nerd about a whole lot of things, but I'm a big fan of Vermeer, like as a painter, and I'm seeing a lot of like you're really good at that warm tones thing and the semi-impressionistic thing that he's got going. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. As a fellow artist, I do have to ask, how many of your story elements do you base just on things that would be convenient or that you would want to draw?
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. In my books, I have a lot of scenery, a lot of descriptions of the countryside and stuff, because I'm a country lover, So I paint that in words as much as I do when I go plein air painting, because I'm just a lover of nature. So there's a lot of nature in my books. I don't know if that's what you mean or not.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I was just asking because like I've done several comics in my time, and I say that as if I'm way older than I am.
In my time.
But I
let me talk about this time I was working with Stanford Lee.
But yeah, I've done where I've changed like a character design or a plot element in the story just because I decided, I really don't want to have to draw this thing like 300 times in the course of the comic. Does that ever come up in the story where you have?
No, because I don't do as much drawing as you do if you do comics. In fact, I thought, wow, comic writers and people who write and draw comics, really, that's a lot of work. I don't, I'm lazy. I'm too lazy for that.
Yeah, you're like, I've just wrote 6 books. I'm lazy,
Yeah, I feel like every artist that like gets into something is like I do this, but like I'm too lazy to do other art style. Like, and the people that are really passionate about it and get to that point of like unconscious competency are truly fascinating.
Yeah, that's how I feel about painters.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it's like
I can draw all day. I'm way too lazy to paint.
So Dianne, tell us about some of your other books outside of Ian's saga. It looks like you have on your website some other novels, and I'm curious what some of them are
I
about.
do. I have quite a few novels. I have one book that's called Where the Yellow Violets Grow. And that was written from letters that my sister-in-law, my husband's sister-in-law, gave me that her mother wrote during World War II. And so it's a true story that I novelized. And it's it's kind of a love story. It's how her parents met. She was a nurse in England, and he was an infantryman who got wounded in France. But there was a major that was interested in her, and he was trying to keep them apart. And so
wow, that's a really intriguing story.
Yeah. And then I have a little Christmas romance called The Far Side of Heaven, and I have a book called Hoarfrost to Roses, which is a historical mystery romance that was that takes place in 1879 Port Townsend. And yeah, there's a ghost in it, and a guy who's almost dead, and his spirit leaves him, and they have these conversations with each other, and the ghost falls in love with her before he does, and then she has to help solve the mystery of who shot him. And
that sounds great. I love that.
It's a fun story.
It's a beautiful cover too. Like I can be like it's kind of like I'm not a wine expert, but like if I'm walking through, I'm like, that's a cool label, I'll grab that. Like this cover, honestly, like it, like the cover of the Hoarfrost to Roses tells a story like in itself that makes me intrigued and want to read it. Like if I walked by that in a bookstore, that would be something that I would definitely pick up.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. And then I have a book called Thread of the Spider, which is it's a historical fantasy. It was takes place in 1920 Ireland when the Irish were fighting the Black and Tans. And it's a story about a young lady and her brother. Her fiance gets captured by the British, and her brother gets captured by the Fae. So we've got she has to find her brother and save her fiance, and so it's very historically accurate. I did a lot of reading and research for that one. So
that's a really interesting way of framing that, because one of my favorite courses in college I got to take for a semester was Revolution and Nationalism in Modern Ireland, and so at CU Boulder, plug for CU Boulder's history department and the very specific classes you can take. But like that, like I was like, oh, the Black and Tans, okay. Like, are we talking Sinn Féin or the IRA? We're talking a little earlier.
We're talking the IRA, but when they first formed, Tom Berry and a few other. Actually, I listened to some interviews that he did because they're on video, which is really amazing. The guys that started the IRA. So, yeah, this is very beginning, right after Easter Rising, or what I forgot.
The Easter Rising. That's an interesting direction to kind of like narrow in on one book here for a second. Like where did that story come from, where you got captured by the British and captured by the Fae? Because there's a really interesting like parallel story concept there that I can kind of see in my head, and I was wondering what the impetus of that was.
Well, I wanted to do something that took the folklore as well as actual history, and the Irish were the best ones because they they're so grounded in their legends as well as their national love for their country, that it's almost as though it was the belief in the Fae or the belief in the spiritual that helped them win that war. So I took the legend, and made it part of what their strength and their stamina, to keep on being Irish, basically.
That's so cool.
That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Our Will, our artist host here, is also a mythology nut. In addition to like all of us to some level. So I was he like this sounds like something that Will would be all over too.
Yeah, it's definitely right up my alley. I love Irish and Welsh traditions as far as the different myths there. And like I actually built an entire world around like parts of the Mabinogi for a game a couple years ago, just
Cool.
because like there is, like you said, just such a rich tradition there that is just so distinct from a lot of other like religious and folkloric traditions around the world.
You know, and that's true. And the thing about the Irish is because before I started writing, I read Paddy's Lament and all the terrible things that has happened to those poor people on that island, you know, and yet they're still strong. They still dance, they still sing, they still carry on their tradition, and nothing brings them down. You know, they're just an amazing people. So yeah, I wanted to show that in the story as well.
That's brilliant. I love that. Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I mean, you've written so many books and of so many varying like settings and themes. I think that's really, really cool. So I was wondering, like, what's kind of your writing routine? What does a typical day look like for you in terms of your writing?
Well, I get up pretty early in the morning. I'll be writing at maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Mostly
Nice.
because I have family here, and you never know when that's going to, interrupt things.
Yeah.
So, but I try to write as much as I can during the day. I'm retired, so it's between painting or, gardening or writing that I spend my time. My husband likes to do housework, so that helps.
Nice. Sounds like you're living your best life. That's great. Yeah. Minimal housework, creative outlets all the time. That's a dream right there.
I'm spoiled.
That's awesome. Yeah, I found that I write better in the mornings as well. So I've been trying to do more of that, before work and stuff. Yeah.
So then the most recent books are the Sword of Shanice series, and those I'm kind of proud of those. I'm happy with those. I got a new book coming out in April 14th.
Is that a Darkness Holds the Sun? I was looking at the cover and I was like, I have questions.
Yeah, okay, shoot.
Great title.
Yeah, that's a story about it's kind of a spin-off novel from the Sword of Shanice. So we've got some of the same characters and it's the same world, but we go a little bit further east and north in that world. So we come up with some new towns and definitely a new plot. But it's about this mercenary who goes off. He's got a son and a daughter and a wife, and they're goat herders. Except his passion is to be, fighter. He's a war guy, and the baron that they're has raised their taxes, and so he has to go and make more money than what goat herding will do. So he picks up his crossbow to go find work. But the problem is that his son has been having seizures, and his seizures are kind of a black magic thing where he's hearing voices telling him to kill his father.
Ooh.
And so after he pays his taxes, he plans on dealing with it. His wife goes, takes the boy to the healer to find out what's wrong. And the healer sends him to this one town, to this baron in this town called Culata. So she has to take this little journey, there after her husband is gone to fight, but her husband ends up getting captured because they think he's an insurrectionist rather than trying to fight for the king. So he gets taken to the king's town, which is in Potama. And so the whole story is that it's not just his son that's having these seizures, but also the king's nephew is having seizures. And they come to find out that all the children are becoming possessed by the spirit, and they take them to the netherworld, and they're raising an army down there. And so the whole idea is to find out who's behind this and what's happening and how can we stop it.
I got goosebumps. That's
cool.
Oh
man,
that's hella cool.
Yeah,
that calls
is such
back
a
to
great premise there.
Yeah, like that calls back to like the creepiness of certain Dragonlance novels and like sorry, that I did have a question. World building, how much forethought and planning goes into world building for something like that? Because it sounds like you have a really well-defined framework, or you at least have these things thought through enough that you can climb off that framework and really build something expansive.
And that's the fun of writing book 4. After you've already started the world, you can keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger. So I did most of the beginning world building when I wrote the book 1, Rise of the Tobian Princess.
Mhm.
And so we've got an island, we've got, the continent where we've got the Potamian kingdom, and then we've got the Kasdamian Empire, and we're getting all these new cities. And I plan on writing another book too, so we're going to go further north. So it kind of grows, the world building grows as you go. And I love making up new cities. And I'm a big fan of Robert Jordan, and I just love his world, his building all the cities and different, cultures and stuff that he puts in there. So, I'm trying to develop my own. And
that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the Wheel of Time books are such an interesting. I mean, they made the series of it after like a long time. I'm very much appreciating the resurgence of fantasy and like a long form series format. But like Robert Jordan's got a really interesting like style and ability to like build a world around like this is what's happening around these couple characters at any given time. So that's a really cool way of doing it. So it kind of sounds like just to go back to the map idea, like you've started around like your like home city or like where it's generally going out, and you just kind of get to spread out from there and figure out what the influences are.
Yeah, well, and each character comes from somewhere, so you have to figure out, okay, well, maybe he comes down south, he went to this university that's way down here, so then your map gets bigger right there. And
Well, Dianne, I've got a question, because as I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what happens to the kids that are being raised in this like netherworld army? So when does Darkness Hold the Sun come out? When is that released?
It comes out April 14th.
Ooh.
And you can order it now. It's on pre-order.
Is that through your website or through Amazon, or?
It's through all the retailers. I got a pre-order through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, you name it. Yeah.
Great. That's awesome.
Excellent.
There'll be a link to that. Oh yeah, Carey.
Do you need a voice for audiobooks? Because these sound like something I would just love to, like The Curse of Mount Reem. Like I sorry, I'm just being a dork. I've got a crap microphone anyway. So, but these like a lot of the authors have like kind of sold me on checking out some like their series. You've kind of jumped to the front of my queue.
Thank you.
It looks really interesting. All the stuff.
Yeah, I think if your goal was to try to make some fantasy that appealed to men, you certainly succeeded here.
Okay.
You might be a little older than your target demographic, but
no, that sounds really cool.
Stuff written for them too. They like Ian's around my age. Yeah, some of my best fans are like 90 years old, so we're
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you're hitting all the age demographics. You're just all the different genres, and that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, with a long form story like this, like how is it that you decided like how long each book is going to be? Because you said that you had turned a couple of other stories into a trilogy. Like, is there just like a part of your process where you decide, okay, this is going to be the cutoff for the book, or is it a little more organic as you're creating it?
Well, when I'm doing a trilogy, like with Chonisi, I had already written Ian's Realm, and I think maybe I cut it off, I probably should cut it off a little differently than I did, because I was not getting people to read book 2, which is why I put all the books together, because I wanted them to know that there was a book 2. I think I finished book 1 a little bit too, too complete, we'll say. But for Chonisi,
you didn't want people to just like pick up book 1 and be like, well, that was a fantastic story, and then move on.
Right. They were happy with that. But for Chonisi, I knew ahead of time that I needed to have a little bit of a cliffhanger in order to get people to read book 2. The story arc goes from book 1 to book 3. It's not finished on book 1 at all. So
Excellent.
you have to keep that in mind. And I try to keep my books, I want them over 100,000 words. That's, that's a goal. And I figure I can do that by having 23 chapters. Each chapter is, 2,000 or 2,500, words per each chapter. So, I kind of plan it that way as far as length of the books goes. And then story arc, I know where I want the end to be, and I know what I need to do in the middle, what events need to start leading up to that. And it does grow as I write too, get throwing in some subplots and maybe a few more characters here and there. So
yeah, and that's
so
like
cool.
that's a good like chapter length too. Like I've found when I'm writing, like I'll end up right about it's like 2,000 words ends up being like a really solid chat. Like you can tell that good beginning, middle, end there. And the I actually know when to start kind of like chopping something a little bit if I get to 3,000. It's like, all right, cool. Like maybe this is a long chapter and maybe it's needed. Maybe this needs to be spread out. And it's really cool that you like, because you're actually like our first plotter, I think, that we've actually interviewed on the podcast. So it's cool that you've got it broke down into like, here's my framework for the book. Here's about the length I want. Here's about what every chapter is going to be. And it sounds like considering the amount of books that you've written, like it sounds you've reached like that level of like, you can kind of like, you've got that, what's that friggin' German word? It's fingertip feel. It's like fingertip gespielen. Like you've got that little bit like, yeah, I can just massage this into the right place. It's really cool.
Yeah, the system works really good for me because each chapter is an event that moves the book forward. So from there, once I have those chapter headings and what the chapter is going to be about, then it's, you can call it pantsing, I guess, because then I just start the dialogue and the description and whatever. But
it's pantsing, but you got two legs in.
Right.
Like
exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Dianne, I'm just like, I don't have any other questions because I'm like, what happens to the children? How are the parents going to save them? So, but Carey, Will, do you guys have any more questions? I know I can't wait to read it. April 17th?
14th.
14th. Good. I'm going to put a link to your website in the description of this podcast. So everyone listening or watching this, go check it out. Because I think we're all excited to see that. Yeah.
I'm planning on publishing a paperback before the 14th. As soon as I get everything put together, because I want to get people, to some reviews in there to, so when the ebook comes out. So.
Well, you'll be getting some from us. Let me tell you that, because we're all excited.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Well, if I can go off on my side, because I think this is the first artist that we've had on other than me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with your paintings, are those like, how much of this is just relaxing? How much of this is trying to convey your thoughts? Because I have also pulled up your website here and been looking through your paintings, and you're a fantastic painter. You have a great eye for composition and for values there. And like, how much of that is just like exploring with the art form? How much is this like what you're seeing, or what's kind of your painting process there?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of the landscapes are done plein air, and I go out with other people and, we just paint outside, which is really a lot of fun. And the whole idea is looking for light, and how light affects the atmosphere and the painting itself. I don't consider myself a really great plein air painter, but I do enjoy doing it. I love going out, into the woods or wherever to paint with other people. The portraits, I love doing portraits the most. Portraits and figure drawings, I love doing them. And I think, studying characters and people, painting as well as writing about them, it's just kind of a study for me. It's learning how to see the beauty in whoever you're talking about, or whoever you're painting. And trying to relate it back, on the canvas. Those are my favorite things, just because I think the human form is just, really gorgeous. And I really admire a lot of painters, that have
Mhm.
done exceptionally, like Rembrandt and, John Singer Sargent and, some of these wonderful portrait artists. I want to paint like that, So
Mhm.
every time I try to get the light right, or get a model,
Yeah.
to where I can, pretend like I'm some famous guy painting. But, so it's a study. It's a study of art form, yeah. I mean, I really do love painting. It's,
Mhm. What got you, so you said you've dabbled in, or not dabbled, sorry, that's did you start with painting or did you start with sculpture, or what was your original medium?
okay. So when I was a little kid, my mother was a painter too.
Oh,
And she
cool.
would give me, she knew I had, some kind of desire to paint. So she'd give me the paints that she didn't want anymore. And she'd go buy new ones and give me the old ones. And I'd just scribble all over the place. And so she decided that I needed a little bit of training. And she had a friend who was a pretty well-known sculpturist at the time. And so I did take some clay work. We did some busts of people, and this artist was doing all the disciples according to their characteristics that she read about. And so
Hmm.
she could form the facial features, just by their characteristics. And so I was learning from her. And I think the work that I've done with clay has really helped me with my oil painting. I didn't pursue clay because it's an extremely expensive hobby. Sculpture is extremely
Hmm.
expensive, and you've got to have a forge, and you've got to have, all sorts of chemicals and, things that I don't even want to deal with.
Yeah. And then
Oh,
the
yeah.
clay itself just costs so much. And then
Yeah,
you have to store everything.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I
So,
wouldn't, I wouldn't have even thought about the storage
Yeah,
for something like
it's
that.
and if you want to move something, you have to have a truck to move it. So, yeah.
So you can't just do what I do, which is just acquire a sketchbook and then forget that you have it after about 5 pages, and then acquire another one when you think I need a sketchbook, and then find your old ones.
Right.
Like, you can't really do that with clay.
wow. Boy, I stick to drawing where I can just like I was at the store the other day and found like a $5 set of markers, and now I'm like, oh, this is fun to sketch with.
Yeah, yeah.
That's also my problem, my apprehension with paint. I've never been able to get into painting because it's so expensive, and like it takes up so much room.
Yeah, I have a studio, so I'm
Nice.
lucky in that way. Yeah.
That's
And I
awesome.
was giving lessons for a long time too. So
Oh, that's
so it's
wonderful.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's a good way to justify getting all of the extra art supplies. Is I have to. I'm teaching.
That's how I justify
Right.
getting a beret.
Exactly. Whenever I sell something, I go and buy another expensive tube of oil paint. So.
Right. Once you sell something, then you're justified, and you have to reward yourself for
Exactly.
going out and
Yes,
selling it.
Well, you need to reward yourself more then, man, considering the amount of writing that you've done. Like
Yeah.
this, yeah, like I'm floored by how like legitimately impressive a creative person you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So do you paint all of your covers for your books?
No, I don't. I don't feel like my work really suits the fantasy genre. I think it's too I don't know, too classical to and I just can't get the coloring like with graphic artists and stuff. So I hire people to do my, but I try to get original artwork, rather than stock photos or anything like that.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate an artist and I don't mind paying them. I think, they should get paid too. So
Amen to that.
Oh yeah, and there's something so cool, and this is like, because I was an art lover before I ever started doing any sort of like writing or drawing or anything. There's something so cool about actually being able to like ping off of another artist when you can actually like communicate, because I personally like seeing somebody's style that I enjoy and saying,
yeah,
I have this idea, like maybe the vaguest concept of like the setting or the posing, or this is what I think a character would look like. And then like I've done that to Will to the point where he's probably sick of me. But how is that like being an artist and talking to other artists? Because it sounds like you can really speak the same language,
Yeah,
even though you've got different styles.
yeah. Yeah, well, the Stella Mario, the one that did the Hoarfrost to Roses cover, he also did the Chonisi covers, not the Darkness. I went to someone else for Darkness, but yeah, we had a pretty good thing going. I told him what the story was about. He gave me a little few sketches, and I said, "Oh, move this over here a little bit," and he just did the artwork. I did the copy. I put in the title and all that. So, but he lives in Italy, so it was a little bit, long. Yeah, took a little bit longer to, communicate back and forth. But yeah, I was really pleased with what he did with all of them, actually.
Yeah, they look great. They look wonderful.
He did have 2 character sketches for me too.
Ooh.
That's kind of the nice thing about the internet, is that you can have this community clear across the world, and you can hire an illustrator in Italy that kind of shares in that style that you want. You get to be a little bit more specific with who you want to have and how you want that to be represented.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same reason foreign films are really fun, because you get to see people's like where the influence comes from. Kurosawa films, everyone's like, oh yeah, quintessential samurai movie, but like he's very influenced by old westerns.
Right.
You see like, and that carried on to Sergio Leone and the post-western kind of stuff. Like I love how like you can actually get people that love concepts or a genre, like The Witcher is written by, if I'm not wrong, he is Eastern
Polish.
European.
Polish.
He's Polish.
Yes.
Yeah, and you get a lot of like these broad fantasy concepts that are put specifically into like a Striga is a very Polish and Eastern European demon. But you get like his lens on that, which is so interesting, and like it's really cool that like I'm a big fan of Renaissance artists and painters, and so like you get to see like here's an Italian guy who comes from like a really interesting lineage on that. And I'm just looking at Darkness Holds the Sun. You've got like there's this fascinating Gothic architecture on that castle in the background.
That guy's got the fellow who did that comes from Turkey.
Oh, he's Turkish. Damn, dude.
Shout out to my mom's family from Turkey. That's great.
There you go.
I'm a quarter Turkish on my mom's side, so
yeah, shout out to Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Yep. Well, Dianne, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful interview.
Yeah,
so excited to check out your stories. You have such a great work of art and painting and writing. Like, you're just an amazing person. So we're really happy to have you on the podcast. This was a wonderful discussion.
Yeah, there's a little bit of film too that in my portfolio. So
what? That's awesome.
I thought I saw your IMDb.
Yeah.
I was like, is this the same person? It kind of sounds like it might be.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you back on to talk about the film stuff, because my day job's in the film industry. So we'll have you back on another time and delve more into that, because you've been a really great guest. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface of the iceberg here.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching Nerds and Friends. I'm going to end the recording here.